In this session, we are going to do a mini project of a rosette and we are going to work from scratch. We'll create the vectors, use tools like Two-Rail Sweep and Shape Editor to create our finished relief, and then at the end, create the toolpaths for this design. We're going to start by creating a new model. We're going to set this model up by 6 by 6 inches, so it's not very big, and click OK. The first thing we'll do is create a simple circle. In ArtCAM, you can actually snap your circle right to the center of your model and start dragging outwards. Now, one of the really nice things with ArtCAM is you can kind of pull and sketch out the shape until you're close, and then if you want to, you can come and type in exact dimensions. Let's create a second circle here, and we'll snap to that center again and pull it out. And we're going to draw in the same way, and I personally draw like this all the time. I sketch my part out, and then I come through and just round those numbers off to nice, even numbers. This is going to be the border of what will be our rosette design. Next, we need to create the leaf for the petal area that's going to go inside. Now, to start this, we are going to work with an ellipse. I'm going to kind of just drag out an ellipse, roughly about that size, and I'm going to take its end piece and snap it right to the middle of our model. This way, when we go to create multiples, it'll fit right in the very center and rotate around evenly. Now we also want to make some changes to this using node editing. We can do this in the 2D view or the 3D view. It's just a personal preference. I'm going to continue to work in the 3D view. Press N to go into node editing, and I'm going to grab one control point, hold the Shift key, and grab the other. The nice thing about this is that it just grabs those two control points and leaves the actual node where it is, which means I can drag these guys, and because that node stays put, it gives me a nice sharp point. We'll do the same thing with the other side. We'll grab both nodes, and when I'm dragging, I'm actually holding the Alt key down, and what the Alt key does is hold those points very straight along either the X or Y axis. I'm going to grab these two here and push them in just a little bit to kind of get a nicer sort of leaf shape. Once we've done that, we're going to take this part and we're going to slice it. We're going to cut it here and here. And if you can't remember the shortcut, which is the letter C, simply right-click on your node and you'll always see that. So now we have this cut into two separate pieces. We need those two pieces to be our rails for our two-rail sweep. The other thing that you need for a two-rail sweep is a cross-section. Now for the cross-section, we actually need to draw two of them. We're going to need one for the leaf and one for this border design. If we go to our vectors and we draw a rectangle, I'm actually going to change it to a square so it's nice and even. And up in the corner, let's trace this out and even it out to about, let's do ½ inch. Create and close that off. This is how we start the cross-sectional shape. Then in node editing, you're always going to want to remove that bottom piece. And in this case, I'm going to delete this point right here, this node, so I get a nice angle. And I want to insert a node right in the middle of the line. M is the shortcut to put it in the middle. By doing that, I have an even part on either side that I can alter now. I'm going to change it into an arc and kind of pull that down and make this one an arc as well and pull it maybe around there. That probably looks good, so we're going to go ahead and just close that off. So this is the cross section or the side profile that we're going to use for the border. We also need one for the leaf. For the leaf, I'm going to start by drawing a rectangle. Let's say somewhere around that size, maybe a little bit shorter. It's a little bit wide. That looks good. In node editing, same idea. We're going to remove that bottom span and insert a point right in the middle. We're going to make an arc and let's drop that down nice and low. Do an arc on the other side and drop this one down nice and low as well. And I find this just a little too steep, so it's very easy to fix. Just grab the two bottom nodes and drag them upwards. Now this is a much better fitting cross section for what we want to do. Now the next step is actually to do the sweep. So for the sweep, we were going to take drive rail 1, drive rail 2, and a cross section. open up the two rail sweep page, and it automatically plugs everything in for you as long as you select it in that order, and already starts the sweep. So you can see this 3D piece that it's making for us. Now it's very interactive, these new tools, and the way they work really allows you to be quite artistic with them. I can do things like grab my drive rails and I can just move them around, change the direction. If you wanted to curve this piece out, or even maybe just as simple as wanting to stretch it out a little bit longer. These are the kind of options that you get when you're working with the live tools. Now let's tilt the part over a little bit and talk about the two-rail sweep. The two-rail sweep is a really fantastic tool. It allows you to take your cross-sectional shape and fit it between those rails. What happens is where the rails become very close together, it actually condenses the shape to fit into that area. And where the rails are further apart, it stretches it out to fit the entire area. Now it stretches it out X, Y, and Z. So you want to be careful to make sure that your part does not become too thick. To control this, we have options inside the page. One of those allows us to actually scale the final height. So I can click on this and I can choose to scale this. Let's say we want to hold this within maybe a 0.15 thickness. Now I'm controlling that thickness, which is great. But I'd like you to notice while we're controlling the thickness, the part where it's compressed, the cross section, is also very thin. This is where you might think about adding in a small start height to kind of thicken it up. It adds a little bit of thickness around the whole base of the entire leaf, giving it that extra edge or thickness. Now, other things we can do with this leaf, we have all kinds of options on this page where we can get into some really advanced choices. But even just simple things like changing the cross section. Maybe I don't want such a straight edge on this leaf. So the cool stuff you can do here is simply mess around with that profile. Grab the nodes, try changing them. See if I simply take this piece and angle it in a bit, and then maybe change the top span to a different line type where I can grab a control point and make, a smoother transition. It looks a lot nicer. Let's do the same thing with the other side. We'll change that line type and grab our control point just to smoothen out that transition. And now you can see quite a difference in this design and in the leaf setup. So what we have here are now soft edges with our start height at the very bottom. Now I'm happy with these changes, so I'm going to apply and close off that page. So here you can see our leaf shape. Now let's pull this cross section aside. We don't really need it anymore. For the leaf, we want to actually take this and have several copies around the piece. In order for us to pick it up, move it, stretch it, change it, we need to first free float it. We need to make it floating blue clip art. The tool that does that for us is called the cookie cutter. Simply click on it and it free floats your part. You can now pick it up, you can move it, you can rotate it, you can do all kinds of things to it. By default, the rotation is actually in the center of the model. So what happens when you rotate is it spins about itself just like this. Now, what I'd actually like it to do is spin about the center of the model so that I can make one of these and have it rotate to finish off the rest of the design. Simply grab that blue rotation center and drag and snap it right to the end of the leaf. Now when I rotate, it rotates about that new point, allowing me to do the next step. So for the next step, for the rotation, we're going to say, I want to rotate this 90 degrees. And before I click apply though, I'm going to hold the control key down. The control key actually makes a copy for you. So hold control, click apply, do this until you have 4 leaves. Now we want to do another set offset by 45 degrees. So I'm going to type in 45, hold the control key and apply. And for this one, you'll notice the leaf kind of meshes in with all the other leaves. What I'd like to do is actually have this look like it's sitting on top of those leaves. So I need to make it thicker. Now I could just scale up the Z height, but it really would look unproportional. Some parts would be really thick, other parts wouldn't be thick enough. Instead, a safer way to do this is to add a start height to the underneath of your leaf. To do this, we go to the secondary page in our transform, and here is where we would add in our start height. Now you won't actually see the change happen yet in the blue portion. We'll actually see it once we paste it down, but it is there for that leaf. Now when we go back to the main page and we change this back to 90 to do a total of 4 copies, hold the control key and again apply, apply, apply. Each one of those new ones has that extra start height underneath it. Now to paste it in, we can actually do this all at once. If I select all of these pieces and hit enter, enter is the shortcut to paste. If we turn our line work off, now you can see our central flower or leaf design. Now the other part we're going to add to this is the central circles. So let's turn our vectors back on and draw a couple quick little circles here. We're going to snap right to the center and drag out roughly around there. And I could drag out a second circle, or if you wanted a very specific size for this, we can use the offset tool. This would allow you to center maybe something like 0.25, offset it, or you can also interactively do that by just dragging with the offset tool. We grab both of these pieces, and with the shape editor, we can give it a flat shape, we can give it a square triangular type shape, and we can also give it a round shape. What we want to do is make sure that we give it a start height, which is high enough to lift it above the other pieces and merge to kind of blend it in. Now, I really do want to control the heights in this. I want to be very specific with the thicknesses. So what I'm going to do is, along with the start height, I'm going to tell it to scale height. And what this does is controls just the rounded portion. And I'm going to say the rounded portion, I want this to be exactly a value that once we add the two together, we have a total height of 0.4. So let's apply that. Now we'll select just the inner piece, and it's the same idea. I'm just going to increase that scale height of the rounded top part so that the two added together will give me a total height of 0.5. Let's apply and close that off. If we turn off the line work, you can see what we have so far. So the next thing I need to do here is create our border. We're going to do another sweep, so we're going to select our drive rails, followed by our cross section, and then we open up the two rail sweep tool. This automatically does the sweep for us. Same as before, we could come in and we could change the cross-sectional shape if we wanted to, change the drive rails, or you simply apply and accept it as it is and close it off. And again, here is where we're at. This is pretty much the finished relief. Now there's a couple different things we could do with it at this point. One is we can talk about machining. Maybe you want to do some more advanced machining with this. For instance, you might want to use a ball nose just to do the 3D portion, and then a flat end mill for the flat background areas. To do this, you actually need better vectors than what we have here. The vectors we have are the original design vectors, which are not going to help us for machining. What I would suggest is creating a new vector layer. I always do this when I want to split out my work, and I would typically call this machining or something like that. And then there's a great tool in the vector pull down, Create Relief Boundary. What this does is automatically make vector boundaries for you around the edges of your relief. You simply have to click Create Boundary. We could now use these for machining boundaries or other boundaries for any number of tools that you can find inside of ArtCAM. Now, another thing you might want to do besides machining is maybe before you machine it, you want to send it out to a customer for final approval. Now, I don't really want to send it out the way it is. Right now, we've only modeled up to this edge because that's all we really need for machining purposes, but for the customer, this will be set inside a wood block. So I'd like to actually fill this in just for the customer approval purposes. And that's pretty easy to do. With our vectors that we have, we're going to create a quick square the size of the model, and we can snap to the corners of the model just like we can snap to the center. We grab the other vector, and with the shape editor, we give it a simple start height, in this case 0.5, the thickness that we want, and we turn the line work off. So here we have our finished design that we could send to the customers. Now you could send it as this piece as you see it, or you can take it a step further and actually render it in a wood grain or whatever material you might be using. To change this, we would go to our model pull down and find our lights and material. From here, we've supplied you with a whole bunch of different materials. There's marble, there's metals, there's all different kinds of woods. Pick one. In this case, I'm going to try a medium oak, and we apply it. and it applies that wood grain to the actual model. You would now rotate it around in a way that you like, and then you would go to your view pull down and choose to save the 3D view image to send to your customer. Now, if we go back to the machining side and you actually do want to set up, even say like a very basic 3D toolpath, inside of ArtCAM Standard, we would go to Toolpaths and we would choose our machine relief. I'm going to choose to machine within a selected boundary. I don't want to machine this flat edge. This is just the top of our block. What we want to do instead is choose our vector boundary to machine within, and that'll be this circle here. So it's only going to machine within this area. Next, we select a tool, and I'm going to select an 1/8 inch ball nose. There's a whole tool database for you to pick from. You can even add in your own custom tools. Now, inside of ArtCAM Standard, we have two strategies that we can work with. We have our raster, which is your back and forth strategy. We also have offset, which is more of a spiral or an offset type strategy. Now, these are just two basic startup options. If you were to go into ArtCAM Premium, there's actually a whole list of different, much more advanced options for your machining setups. Down here, we could do roughing if we wanted to, and at the very end, we have our material setup. Let's say we have 3/4 inch material, and then we simply calculate the toolpath. The red that you're seeing right now is the toolpath itself being calculated. Those red lines represent your tool running over to form the part. Now, the last thing you probably really want to do before you send this out to the machine is to check it. So ArtCAM comes with a tool for simulation. Now, you can either do a quick instant simulation or you can let it run through the tool so you can actually see how this is happening. And we can run through slow or we can run through at a much faster pace. And you can really see here exactly how the tool is going to cut this part out of your material on the CNC machine. This is a great way to verify that you're using the right size tool for the job. You would now send this code out to the machine and set it up to go. So in this tutorial, we've gone through quite a few things. We have gone through how to set these vectors from scratch. So we've done all the designs, we've done some node editing. We then used a little bit of shape editor and a lot of two-rail sweep, which is a really fantastic tool for very organic and custom shapes. And then we've also gone through some basic toolpath setup. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for watching.